Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us again an opportunity to learn of your grace through creation. We know that we learn of your power, we learn of your majesty through the works of your hands, and yet we know that we're thankful all the more for your holy word, through which we learn not just of your power, but of your salvation and your grace for fallen man. Strengthen us in this study so that we learn about you and ultimately learn about our Savior. In Jesus' holy name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So, if there's one thing I'm hoping to accomplish with this 5-week series we've been doing, it's that you always maybe take a few moments once in a while to do this. We always, and I think we're awesome about remembering the wonders God did on the cross and with his son. Take a few minutes to look to thank God for all the other things he does to preserve us and love us. So this one's also a little different in that I'm not going to be showing, how I've always had kind of a few slides to show you what to look for. This time we're going to dive in pretty quickly. So, and there will be some repetition today. So this is kind of a recap. And it's almost, I don't know, do you remember the first one, Thinking God's Thoughts After Him? This is kind of a sequel to that. And by the way, I could have 20 sequels to that one. There is so much that I have to restrain myself. So I restrained myself on Thinking God's Thoughts, and it spilled over into another presentation. So I guess you could say I was undisciplined. But I just couldn't hold back, so. Now, this is a little review question. I thought this was, we had that presentation on the two infinities, and we took that little trip out into the universe, at least out into the solar system. I saw this, and I just thought I'd pass it on to you. That if you took one grain of sand, if that was be possible to hold one grain of sand, and if you held it out at arm's length, got that? So you do this, and then you would look in that direction. That would block 10,000 galaxies from your sight. That's another way of just getting a feel for this. This unbelievable what's going on out there. And I don't even know that's out there, because when I look out at the end of that, I see this black spot in the sky. By the way, did anybody look out last night? The last 2 nights have been awesome for clear and great star viewing. But anyway, unbelievable what God has out there. And I just saw NASA admitted, not just NASA, but the astronomers admitted, our estimate of the number of galaxies in the universe, we're going to have to multiply that by 5. It's because we're so limited in our vision and our tools, and as soon as we gain a little bit more, we go, whoa, there's even more. And then just a comment on symmetry. That was our last presentation. So simple, fold, left-rightness, and yet, remember I told you that was a big deal in physics? I know this is a little late now, but 2008, and I'm sure if I had more time to update this, I'm sure there's more up to date. But in 2008, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to an American and 2 Japanese scientists for work related to symmetry. When they find a beautiful symmetrical description, they know that they've really hit on a major principle, because they've observed that God does this. Well, they don't call it that, but that God presents things in a balanced, symmetrical way. And we saw this last time, so I'm going to pass it up. So we're ready to go. Just a reminder, if you get on the internet, divinemath.com, if you go there, you can at least get an outline to most of the things I talk about, and some things that I have more than 5 presentations. And if you want to look at a little bit more, you could.
That's your website?
That's my website.
Okay.
Yes, that's my website. It's not anything spectacular, but it does have links to many of the things. Okay, so this is another quick review. Remember this beautiful symmetry that, sound. I showed you how sound behaves in a symmetrical way. Remember we saw that sand vibrating on that table? And then light. We're talking two of the major things that you and I take in every day, sound and light. Light always travels a path that will get it there the quickest. And this is a big deal. In industry, engineers are always trying to find what? The most efficient way to get a job done? Because if you can get a job done more efficiently, you can use less materials, probably have less waste, probably have something that behaves more quick, all kinds of good things. Well, that's the way God does it. Light travels that way. And we had looked at this, this idea that God does his geometry every day. He's doing it right now. You and I are spinning around because the earth does that one time every day. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look at some things that I was just talking to your teacher, your science teacher, and we were talking about how applications are so important. And there are some things in math that you were like, come on, give me something real. This is a classic. We all know that you can't take the square root of a negative number because the answer, when you multiply it by itself, has to come out to -1. And you can't get a positive number to come out. 2 times 2 is a positive 4. You can't do a negative. -2 times -2 is a positive 4. How in the world? Who? And so somebody said, I'm going to make it up. Let's call it I. And now, I know. And the non-math fans are like, boy, that did it. You've gone over the top now. Where is the slip so I can exit this class? But I just wanted to show you some of the applications that people don't hear about. So when it comes to imaginary numbers are what allow computers to rotate a graphic 90 degrees real quickly. And this is a big deal in today's world. Gamers and people who use technology, this is a huge time saver. So, and guess what? In all of really the electrical field, they call it J in electronics, but still it's the same number. It's very important. Yeah, here's another one in high school or college. When they first come upon something called the conic sections. It's all the ways you can slice a cone, okay? Well, you slice a cone, you either get a circle. We have talked about how big that is in God's creation. If you slice it a little differently on this angle, you get a parabola, which is the shape of gravity. That's really important. And here we have, if you slice it this way, you get an ellipse. You and I are on an elliptical ride right now around the sun. We talked about this happening every day. The ride around the sun takes a year. And guess what? We're on an ellipse. Mess up that ellipse, and we're going to get fired off into some of that infinity. Okay, so anyway, I just showed a couple things here. Kepler and Newton, you've heard about Kepler. Well, Newton's the discoverer of calculus. Yeah, they came up with that. Well, we wouldn't have gone to the moon without the conic sections. Yes, sir?
When we get to heaven, will we be on an ellipse?
Will we be what?
On an ellipse?
I don't know. My guess is a perfect circle, but it's one of the first things I will check, so when we get up there.
Will you get back to him too?
Yeah, and I'll get back to you instantly because I'll have tremendous communication power at that point. Oh, that'll be so cool. And even better, this sounds crazy, but I want to sit down and have a talk with the Holy Trinity and ask them about some of these other cool designs. But anyway. So this guy came up with something called geostatistics, which again, some people think, wow, you can keep that in the classroom. Well, it's turned out to be an important part of machine learning, and machine learning is, that's part of this thing that make our devices, what? Get closer to having common sense like humans do. Closer, they don't get there. This gentleman was so important, they knighted him, Sir Roger Penrose, and he discovered something about some shapes called quasicrystals. And again, you maybe don't have a lot of interest, a little bit of the science. Well, quasicrystals are what allow those non-stick, that's that non-stick surface on the frying, on anything where you fry your foods, which is really wonderful when it comes time to clean. And if you make scrambled eggs like I do, it's kind of cool to just let them slip right out. Yeah. Well, mathematics allows that. This is kind of an ancient, Leonard Euler, another big name in mathematics, way back in Königsberg, Germany, which by the way is now in Russia. Borders have changed. But in Königsberg, there was this quaint little town. Of course, I don't know, I don't have the exact year, but at that time we didn't have cars, okay? And so at night, a typical pastime, maybe after dinner, was for the husband and wife to take a walk. Great idea, take a walk with your wife. There were 7 bridges in Königsberg. The blue represents, you can see the black and white, that's the town. The blue represents the river, and you can see there were 7 red bridges. So this is called the Bridges of Königsberg problem. Anyway, the goal was to take this walk and to cross all the bridges exactly once and to end back at home. Well, Euler found out this is impossible. And this sounds like a silly thing. Oh, well, okay, so I'm into gaming now? Well, it turns out this is exactly how communications work. For example, when you want to, let's say you run a dairy and you deliver milk to various locations each day. What's the most efficient way to deliver it? Okay, what's the best path? Or when it comes to telephone communication or electronic communication, what's the most efficient way to get this message from this person to that person? All of this relates to this. So I've got this on the application side. Worldwide communications now use this silly little thing that Euler found out, and it wasn't just for games. It turns out to be very applicable. A German by the name of Riemann found out, he was the first guy to say, well, wait a minute, geometry is not always flat. We have this thing called 3 dimensions, and he came up with this spherical geometry. It's like geometry curved around a sphere. And again, the books, most geometry books don't teach about this, and they don't need to. So it looks like, oh, this is kind of silly. Well, along comes a guy named Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity, the idea that there could be a black hole, and guess what? Perfectly follows Riemann's geometry rules. Very applicable. Okay, so Corny, yes sir?
Euler.
Yes.
What, if any theory or theorem that he devised that has a name?
Well, I don't know, do you have a calculator anywhere? I mean, okay, if you look on if you have a scientific calculator, you should see an E, a small E on there. That's named after Euler.
Okay.
E, let me just say real briefly what E is. E is the perfect exponential base that that comes out with the most, it's hard, how do I describe this to people who are not up with this, but, and you may be, but it's the only, e to the x is the only number that is its own derivative. And I know you don't know what a derivative is, but in calculus, it's a very important operation, okay? So if you take the derivative of that, you get the same thing back again. And Euler is the one that kind of discovered that. But let me give you one more. If you take a polyhedron, that's an object that's closed up. I showed you pictures of those. It's closed up, so there's no holes. And all the sides are squares or triangles or pentagons or things like that, okay? Well, Euler came up with a theorem about how many corners there are, how many edges there are, and how many faces there are. V plus F equals E plus 2. And that sometimes is named after Euler too. So anyway, there's a lot. Now, this is a corny graphic, but here's the idea. You meet up with someone from your past, someone maybe you haven't seen for 20 or more years, okay? Hey, how are you doing? You know, and the one guy says, you know, usually one of the questions is, what are you doing? Well, I'm a statistician. And often the response will be, well, I'm sorry to hear that. maybe not. But, okay, a very important curve in mathematics is, well, remember, I showed you with the dropping balls? Yeah, it's that curve. There it is without bars, you know, more smooth. It's called the normal distribution curve. Okay, off to the left is the equation. Take a look what's in that equation. Pi. Pi? Wait a minute. Pi is the number that we use for circles, right? Pi times r squared. What does this have to do with a circle? Well, it turns out that pi is in the most unique places. And it just, and by the way, there's E again for Mr. Bruss. Here's Euler again. He shows up in that thing too. And there's these certain things that you're like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with that curve? There's these interesting mysteries that come up. So I just show you these quotes that kind of relate to that. How can it be that mathematics, and by the way, remember I mentioned to you that the textbooks will tell you that math is purely an invention of the human mind. That's their philosophy. So in other words, some guy, maybe like we did with the square root of -1, I'm going to call that I. That's pretty rare, but let's just, I guess they believe that's what we did with math, just developed over the years. Yeah, let's do this, let's do that. How can it be that mathematics, being after all a product of human thought, independent of experience, is so admirably adapted to the objects of reality? So even Einstein saw, no way is that just all random and made up in the mind. Okay? John Polkinghorne, who was a physicist, very much into religious studies too. He said humans invent abstract, so even he fell for this. Humans invent abstract mathematics, basically making it up out of their imaginations. Yet, math magically turns out to describe the world. This points to a very deep fact about the nature of the universe. That namely that our minds, which invent mathematics, conform to the reality of the cosmos. Well, if they conform to the reality of the cosmos, are they really making it up? That's where I would argue with him a little bit. We are somehow tuned into its truths. It's all around us. How are we going to suddenly get up and go, oh yeah, what, gravity? Never heard of it. No, I mean, it's part of our life. So anyway, and then you've seen me quote this guy before, Nobel Prize winner, Eugene Wigner. He's the one that said Galileo was right about math being written in the that the universe is written with the alphabet of mathematics. The enormous usefulness of mathematics in the natural sciences is something bordering on the mysterious, and there is no rational explanation for it. You're going to try logically figuring out why that works? You're not going to find it, he's saying. And then, I shouldn't have dignified this with quotes, but that's me. And you've heard that I believe math is simply our attempt at trying to write down all this order that we see that God put there. So it's no shock at all that it matches up. Nobel Prize winner again, John Eccles. He won his in medicine. Each of us is a unique conscious being, a divine creation. It's the only view consistent with the evidence. Oh, I love this one. This is a chemist, Henry Fritz Schaefer. And you can read about, he was nominated for the Nobel Prize several times. He's often quoted. Listen to this. This is so neat. The significance and joy in my science comes in the occasional moments of discovering something new and saying to myself, so that's how God did it. My goal is to understand a little corner of God's plan. Yeah, this guy's got it right. And by the way, and one of my goals, you probably figured this out by now, is to show you there are many people in this so-called godless science universe that are very much in tune to God. Okay, let's get back down to earth here. Problem. One would think that it would be a simple job for modern science to create a fireproof fabric better than anything found in nature. After all, no living things in nature besides man crash and burn. The problem? 80% of people who die in airplane crash fires are killed by the smoke that comes from the seat cushion, from the seats. It's a sad truth. So if they survive the crash, they often die from this smoke. Yeah, anyway, the foam in the cushion begins to produce toxic smoke when temperatures get up to 1300 degrees. And of course, you put some jet fuel in there, it's going to get up there pretty quickly. Solution. Check this out. It took 2 years of work by an upholstery manufacturer in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He came up with a better idea. The new fabric, which has been used on some airline seats, remember the old temperature was 1300 degrees. With this fabric, the smoke doesn't come out until 5000 degrees. Much better. In fact, you could go up to it with a blowtorch and you wouldn't get the smoke. Okay, guess where he got the idea? Wool. Yeah, one of God's creations. I love it. This is what the inventor said. It's one of God's ideas. There are things about wool that are beyond what man can do. And then I just have tons of things I want to show you. Flies, you know those irritating things that I'm swatting? I don't want them in my house. Yeah, well, turns out their wings at the hinge have this amazing lubricant called Reslin. And you see the quote, Reslin, the stuff fly and dragonfly hinges are made of, is the most perfect rubber ever found. And you notice this is by a researcher trying to do better or copy. I'm not going to get into all the details here, but we're starting to talk about drugs. And look what Sam Gelman, professor of chemistry at University of Wisconsin in Madison, said. What we've done is mimic a molecule living organisms use to fend off bacterial invasions. So in other words, we're copying what God already put in the human body. Okay, off to a conch shell. Conch shell contains a ceramic plywood-like microarchitecture. And you can see what Ballerini says. The shell makes an excellent model for load-bearing ceramics that are suitable for aerospace and computer industry applications. Biologically inspired vision, long paper on it. And they produce these little tiny flying machines. You can see he's holding one on his finger. So what's the most perfect knot? God's creation knows. DNA. You've got the most perfect knots inside of you. And I'll just read here. Tall ship sailors are adept at storing ropes, but nature does it better. Sailors have a lot of unused space in the middle of their rope coils. New mathematical analyses show that the helical twists of DNA and proteins are the ideal shapes for packing rope-like structures. Well, that's cool because the rope-like structure, DNA, we have in there. So isn't it nice that it's ideally packed? Not surprising when you look at the Trinity that designed it. Okay, I'm not moving. This is a sea cucumber, and I guess, believe it or not, they're really good at what they will do is change shapes when a stimulus hits them. And again, this is a big deal. We want things that, you know, like for example, when we have a smartphone, and if you touch something, something's supposed to happen, right? So from a stimulus, you get a quick response, and the quicker the better. And just down to the bottom it says, but of course, nature got there before the engineers did. So we've talked about the giraffe before. Remember how I showed you when he has to get a drink, he better go down in a symmetrical way so he spreads his leg? Well, just an amazing plumbing job in giraffes. You see, the plumbing masterpiece that is the human body is the inspiration for a tiny new smart valve, just 1.5 millimeters across. And they talk about how the elephant, the reason I put the elephant neck up there is because he's got this major problem. He's got these longer pipes. And, you know, if the giraffe puts his head down and if the valves aren't working right, the head's going to drown. Okay, so that's all stuff that had to be figured out. Yeah, how we doing here? 9:30. Okay, I got to just keep my eye. Okay, let's look at this one. Millions of hatchling loggerhead sea turtles emerge from their underground nests on beaches along the east coast of Florida, and they kind of toddle into the sea. About the size of a child's hand, the infants, these turtles have never swum before. Yet they head immediately for open water, and over the next few years, make a great circular journey encompassing much of the North Atlantic before returning as adults to their natal beaches. This long-distance migration is among the most remarkable feats of animal navigation known, rivaling the north-south migration of monarch butterflies, humpback whales, and Arctic terns. I've got another migration one I want to show you, but the firefly, another interesting little creature. Here's the deal. We know they flash their lights, right? And remember when you were a child, was that one of your favorite things on a summer evening? Go out there with a jar, actually capture some, and then you have your own, you know, at least for a while. Well, in certain parts of the world, and with certain species of firefly, they sync. They all flash at the same time. And scientists are like, what? That makes no sense. If all of this evolved, how could that possibly happen? Sync. They don't even communicate with each other. Oh yeah, it works. It's pretty wild. Yeah, and I should just show you one more thing. What's wild is the scientists don't find any timing mechanism inside of the fireflies. They're like, wait a minute, how does this work? It says here, every explanation they come up with credits the firefly with having some sort of pacemaker in its tiny brain. To those with an evolutionary view, this is unacceptably complex. So in other words, the evolutionists are like, let's just not talk about this. This doesn't work. Okay, so the dragonfly, remember I highlighted him a while back? Well, this little sequence shows how Sikorsky modeled one of their helicopters after the dragonfly. Sikorsky is the leading helicopter manufacturer finished the design. So anyway, it just shows Sikorsky's model for transporting personnel and artillery was built upon the examples derived from dragonflies. Okay, let's talk about the lotus leaf. The lotus leaf has a really unique characteristic. It stays clean. It's got this principle of adhesion, so when rain comes, it cleans itself. The raindrop goes down, it grabs the dirt, and it goes away, and this thing is forever clean. This has already been mimicked. There's a product out, it's called Lotusan. Lotusan, at least they gave credit to the origin. And they actually put it on siding. I can't tell you which brands, but that's actually a product out there. So you don't have to actually go out there and clean your house. The product does it itself. Okay, now this is just another view of the same thing where the water droplets move over this microscopic surface. And okay, so now we've talked about these high-tech swimsuits. Okay, here you have on top a shark, and sharks have this amazing ability to slide through the water. By the way, this is an ad by Speedo. You probably can tell. Did you see this? It says, nature perfected by Speedo. Yeah, so like we did nature one better. I don't think so, but anyway, you can see the swimsuit that's on a swimmer down below there. So I want to just highlight a couple things. So the unique thing about shark skin is it's got these, they're called denticles. They're almost like triangular shaped things. You would think bumps would get in the way, right? But these bumps are the secret to the extra speed. So they've actually mimicked that, and Speedo now calls it fast skin. Yeah, and it mimics the shark skin with... So these crazy grooves actually reduce drag. You would think it would work the opposite.
Question?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That same concept is now evolving into texturing of rubber molds so that you now have reduced the frictional forces of rubber against any other substrate.
With some kind of a
texturing
a
of
bump, a texturing, yeah.
Same kind of texturing. And it's
Thank
really
you.
amazing what's happening in that area.
So in rubber products.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, this Chrysler in 2005 actually mimicked, if you look up here, this is the boxfish. And they actually mimicked it, and you may not think it's a real looker, but let me just say, they unveiled this concept car. It was a diesel-powered prototype, and it could go 180 miles an hour, and it had an average mileage of 70 miles per gallon. So it took advantage. I know, it doesn't look like this should be aerodynamic, but the boxfish is very efficient. So all I'm saying is, guess what? Manufacturers are getting on board, and they are copying. I love it, these unique substances on some insect wings, like butterflies. They're actually not pigmented, but rather what it is it's the way light interacts with the object. So I'll just read. Butterflies exhibit vibrant colors and stay clean using nanoscale structures on their wings. Designers and engineers have emulated this strategy to create self-cleaning coatings, fabrics, and paints. I'll just tell you this too, they're actually looking into using this for a new type of camouflage. They're actually talking about putting this on ships at sea so that they would almost be invisible. And where are they getting it from? Oh, they're getting it from the idea from God. This talks about insect navigation. These, let me pull. These two hair-like structures coming down from an insect are called halters. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. But those kind of act like a what? A GPS, a gyroscope. And very effective. Insects, as you know, can navigate so quickly and efficiently. And as you can see, this is from some researcher. These are from scientists. Okay, now more down to earth. That is tumbleweed. And tumbleweed turns out to be really efficient at cleaning up the atmosphere. They actually experiment on it even with uranium. And it was the most efficient product at cleaning the air. It says tumbleweeds and other tumbleweed-like plant, kochia, like the plant kochia, were our best accumulators. Even better, she says, the tumbleweeds do their work before they flower or seed. So they're just very efficient. So now I'm going to speed a little bit. These are highly technical. I just want to show you a bunch of research projects that are going on. Okay? And what they're doing is reverse engineering God's designs. So here's one at Iowa State. They're really getting big into this, how insects can detect chemicals and they can communicate. Remember how I told you, what was it, the kind of tree? Cottonwood, thank you. The cottonwood tree communicates with other cottonwoods chemically. Well, insects do this all the time. Here's another one from IPM Corporation. By the way, DOD objectives, that's Department of Defense. The government's big time into studying this. Use of signaling chemicals, opportunities for the exploitation of these unique sensing and locomotion schemes to achieve Department of Defense objectives. I mean, they're actually studying releasing these little, manufactured insects on the battlefield. So small, nobody even sees they're coming. Some of them have a camera in, so they'll land right in a foxhole or whatever, and this guy's got plenty of ammo. And, you know, all that, I mean, wow, life has changed quite a bit. University of Arizona, this one is olfactory control of insect flight. Olfactory, that's your sense of smell. And it's, you could just focus in on the white part. Advanced understanding of the olfactory control of flight behavior in moths and other insects. And the reason, to enable the use of this chemically controlled behavioral system for strategic purposes. University of Montana. Again, let me just do this one real quickly. Bees, they want insects to do bioreporting. So it's like, send these insects in and then get the report back electronically or chemically. I know that sounds like I'm talking about starting a science fiction movie, but that's actually stuff that's being done. Enhanced stability and performance. There's too much, so I'm sorry, I'm scooting a little bit here. Here's one from Allegheny University of the Health Sciences. Development of biomimetic robots and sensors. Extending our current techniques for controlling machines directly from the brain. So from watching creation, they want, you know, so for example, I could be looking at a computer and go, you know, I'd really like the next page. Just think that. So direct brain control. Duke University Medical Center, pretty famous in medicine. They're looking at real-time control of robotic arms. So for people maybe who've lost a limb, helping people out. MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And these are all going on, and they're all they're all just taking a close look at what God has designed and how could we make use of this. This area has just exploded. It's all the rage in science. Here's one in England, the University of Manchester, and they've come up with a new mathematical way of describing the behavior of the heart. And that helps them more carefully, find out what's wrong with some individuals' hearts and what they could do to help them out. Bell Labs, electronic, so they've figured out a way to replicate a few things the brain does. They're always on this quest to try to, this is the ultimate computer, not mine, but those are the ultimate computer because everybody's trying to copy them. Have a problem with memory? Well, Axel Unterbeck, chief of executive of memory, actually Kandel, his associate, he got the Nobel Prize for figuring out what makes sea slugs remember. And again, why would we want to know why sea slugs remember? Yeah, so that we can apply it to, there was something else I was going to tell you about this, but I forgot. Whew, how much has that happened to me at this age? But anyway, so they're actually, one of the main reasons they're getting into that is, as we get older, what is it, short term, I think is more likely to be a problem, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, usually we remember long term better, but what was that address that guy just gave me? Oof. Yeah, I'm starting to fall to that. So you want a better network? You want to have a better communication? Check out ants. Telecommunications firms may be able to make their networks more efficient by emulating the techniques of ants because they have a way of setting up the quickest lines of communication. And here we go back to this fluorescent, this coloring of things like butterflies. Fluorescent patches on the wings of African swallowtail butterflies work in a very similar but more efficient way to high emitting, LEDs, all these new LED lights. Butterflies' wings work that way. So now, a really cool migration story. The bar-tailed godwit. It's so famous that it made, one of the major news networks.
Astonishing piece of research in the science world. It has to do with great stamina over great distances. Scientists tracked the flight of a particular bird, a female bar-tailed godwit, starting from its nesting ground in Alaska, non-stop, all the way to New Zealand. No layovers, no food, no rest. 7,257 miles, almost the length of the entire Pacific Ocean, a journey previously thought to be only possible by aircraft.
And there's more of those. It's just unbelievable. Bioluminescence. Now, certain creatures, like fireflies, have this ability to produce their own light, right? And I've just got a collection of a number of them. Some are under the sea, some fly. Anyway, again, what's cool about this is it's cool light. All the man-made light has a problem. It generates heat. And I don't know if you've ever been on television, been in a TV studio, you would know because boy, it gets hot in there. I remember our college choir would sing on TV occasionally, and man, it was so hot under the lights. And of course, they're saying, "Oh no, now smile pretty, think cool." Anyway, that's a big problem. Well, guess what? Bioluminescence light? No problem with temperature. So again, scientists are interested. Some other little tidbits here. This kind of speaks for itself. That's the eye of an insect. That's a dome developed by math and science guy Buckminster Fuller. Any similarity there? That's an insect compound eye by diagram. That's Scope Arena and Exhibit Hall in Norfolk, Virginia. Yeah, it really is true. The Eiffel Tower was designed to mimic the hip bone. That's exactly what the design, you can read about that. I mean, go ahead and look it up on the internet. And it is very stable for that reason. But the bone structure very much mimics how that works. Here I just do it by animation. That's, I can't remember, is that a parasail? I think so. Again, the wing structure, you know how some birds, their wings split on the end into separate feathers? Have you noticed how most of the aircraft now do that? Have you flown on a jet lately? If you look out on the wing, they'll have some separate devices on the end, and maybe even, anyway, they're mimicking that. Yeah, sorry, but look, that's a grasshopper windpipe over here. So you probably recognize that, right? Barbed wire. Well, guess what? You probably didn't know this, but Michael Kelly filed a patent for barbed wire in 1868. You know where he got the idea from? Look way at the bottom. Yeah, from creation. Powdered willow bark. Yeah, that's where they got the idea for aspirin from. Aspirin, probably one of the, best miracle drugs out there? How we doing on time? We seem to be okay. I don't know, anybody takes Taxol, but basically it comes from the bark of the Pacific yew tree. And again, we don't have time to read it. Dragon's blood is what the natives call the resin that comes from the Dracaena cinnamomum trees, and that's used to fight infections. You know, it almost goes back to, you know, those, every once in a while we discover a new native tribe. These poor people who don't know much, you know, they're real primitive. We love to use the word primitive, and then we find out, why do you have such great health here? And sure enough, they're chewing on a root or using the resin from trees, and yeah, and they know more than some of us who think we're really hot stuff, you know. So anyway, a couple passages to close out here. I love this passage. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So I believe the Lord is telling us we should spend some time thinking about some of the stuff we've been going through. And then one of my favorite hymns, Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. Join the full throng, wake harp and psalter and song, sound forth in glad adoration. I'm not sure in your hymn book where that is, but I know you have that, right? Yeah. So that's it. So just take a moment, thank the Lord for all these awesome things he provided all for us. And I really appreciate that that Holy Trinity took the time, had allowed me to do this. It's been great meeting and talking with so many of you. Yes?
This is a very simple question. Do you find in your teaching of math that being proficient in math is innate? Or is that something you acquire?
I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that. I've seen both. I think you can acquire it. I don't think it's all natural.
I mean, like some people are very good in music, some good in...
Yes, and some people are very good in math naturally. I'm not brilliant right off the bat in math, but I found it so much fun to acquire. That's kind of how it worked with me. But there are people like you describe, yes. In fact, often college professors are that way. some of these guys that are, and actually I don't think they're the best teachers. You know, the guys that is like, oh, of course. Should they be teaching your kid who's going, what was that again? And they're like, what's your problem? Okay, so this is a wild idea, but I honestly think some of the best teachers are the teachers that had to fight a little bit harder to get some of the concepts. So, but yeah, so I'd say some of each. It's a good question. Thank you. We probably have time for maybe one or two more.
If there's any more questions, please shoot them at...
Yes.
Did we get the answer about the couples crossing the 7 bridges?
Yeah, the answer is it was impossible.
Really?
Yeah, Euler discovered that those poor couples, no one would ever succeed. And it's actually a pretty simple principle, but it took Euler a while to figure it out. Still, they had some wonderful walks. And they bonded with their spouse, you know, it was awesome. But yeah, Euler found out that, by the way, it was partly the number of the bridges. Thank you for good questions. Any others? I wish my format would have allowed for more questions, because I absolutely that's what I love about teaching. I'm trying to get students more, you know, especially in college. A lot of students want to go find that corner seat, get a nice comfortable position, look at their smartphone and just kind of vegetate. And they're not gonna, they gotta get in there and so I love it when somebody goes, can you tell me, why did you do that thing in the third line there? Oh man, that's how you learn. So anyway, I wish I had left more time for that. I'm sorry that maybe I made a bad decision on how much content and how much discussion, but anyway.
I think we can tell Dr. Buelow he made a very good decision with this presentation by thanking him with a round of applause.
Thank you, guys.